Elizabeth Anderson, also known as Lizzie, is a graphic designer who, like many of us, went rogue and started exploring the art world. Her lively animal illustrations can brighten up the gloomiest of days, and I was very curious to know how she achieved that. You can find more of Lizzie's work on her Instagram at Elizabeth_Anderson_art. But for now, please join us as we share tips on achieving your art style, how to combine traditional with digital mediums to create unique pieces, and art reference horror stories. Want to be part of the show? Then send in your questions or topics you'd like to see covered to our email at hello@etcherlab.com. If you send us an audio recording, we might include it in the episode. Hi, I'm Anya, and this is Make More Art, a podcast by Etcher, meant to inspire you to keep on creating. Now let's hear from our guest. Lizzie, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm super excited to have you here, especially because you are about to, when this episode comes out on that week or the week after, we will have you teaching a live demo for us at Etcher Lab. The date is already settled. Do you remember the date from the top of your head?
I think it was the 17th of November.
I think, yes, that is correct. Now
Yes,
say it out
17th.
loud. So yeah, 17th of November, Lizzie is going to do a live demo, and this is going to be fun because your art is just so bubbly and fun. And I would love to get to know the why of your art, and we'll get to that in just a second. So for those of our audience who do not know you, can you just quickly tell us who you are and what you do?
Okay, well, I'm Elizabeth Anderson, and I am a graphic designer. I usually just make logos and really kind of, well, I shouldn't say boring part of graphic design, but the stuff where I can't really use my imagination. So I make logos, I make
corporate stuff.
Yeah, a lot of corporate stuff, posters and infographics, and that's where I make my money actually. But during lockdown in England, I'm in England. A lot of my work just disappeared, so I decided to go back to drawing and illustrating, which is what I love and what I learned to do. And I just started illustrating again and sharing my work, and then people asked to buy prints, and then I started selling prints and cards, and then I started painting on porcelain, and I started doing all sorts of things, and just over the summer it's kind of taken off, and now everyone seems to know me for my wacky little characters that I draw, and every week I get people asking, can you do this, or can you draw my dog in that style? Can you draw my cat in that style? Can you draw me and my cat? Can you draw my childhood dog talking to my dog right now? Things like that. That's what I get. And actually, that's kind of who I am. I studied at Ringling School of Art, and I studied at Washington State University. So that's kind of very briefly.
Yeah. And it does make sense that you come from a graphic design background. And for those of you in the audience who have listened to prior episodes, maybe the one with Cherry, I talk about coming from a graphic design background as well. And I think that's why your work speaks so much to me, because it's art, but you see the graphic design in your art, because where you place the colors, the way that you do the composition between your characters, it's so graphic designy, if that's even a word. So I love that because of it. And I love how playful and heartwarming, and the word is not simple, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's not complicated. I'm not saying it's easy to do, because it's not. There's a lot of doing things that look simple takes a lot of work. It's something that we learn in graphic design. But yeah, I'd love to know, so is art something that always was part of you growing up, or is that something that you started exploring during this lockdown period?
No, I've drawn since I could pick a pencil up. I've always been drawing my whole life since I was young.
And why
I was
does
very very good at art at school when I was, a little infant. Uh, I did art all through school. My art teacher was my favorite teacher. My very first ever um, teacher was actually an artist. I started school when I was 4, and my teacher was a hippie artist.
The best kind of
And
teacher.
I was drawing a picture of somebody sitting in a car. And she said to me, "How can I see their legs and arms in your picture? You can't see legs and arms if you look at someone, not arms, legs and
Mm-hmm.
bottom. You can't see that if you look in a car." And I said, "Well, so people know they're sitting in the car." So she took me outside and we sat by the roadside and she made me watch all the cars driving past, and then we went back in and then I drew it, and that was she was my first teacher at 4 years old, and ever since then I've always known you must draw what you see, not what your brain is telling you. So
Wow.
so that was like my first beginnings of art. And she was from America, actually. She wore cowboy boots and long hair, and I wanted to be her. That's all I ever wanted to be, was that. Not a
Wow.
teacher, no, no, but an artist.
For you to remember that and you were just 4, that's a huge impact it had on you.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, absolutely huge.
And
Yeah.
why do you think you love making art so much? Where did that come from?
It's just relaxing. It's just natural. It's just like, some people, I guess, smoke, and some people drink to relax. And I doodle. That's what I do. My house is full of books, of doodles and drawings and paintings, and that's what I do. On a Friday, I'll sit down and watch the TV with my family, but I'll have a notepad or a sketch pad, and I'll just be doodling. Sometimes I look at them and I think maybe I'm mad, maybe I'm
No.
maybe I'm insane.
No. I think all of us artists at one point or another think about that. I mean, I know I do. I'd love to know everybody's thoughts on that, so you can comment on it on the blog post associated with this episode at etterlab.com/Lizzie, Lizzeaie, spelling in English. My next big thing to conquer. Okay, so something I'd love you to talk about, because we briefly talked about this when we had our call a couple weeks ago or last week, but you doodle, and you told me, we were talking about how am I going to do the live demo, Anya, if my doodles are like something I do super quickly and it comes so easily to me. And I think I said something along the lines, well, I'm pretty sure that was not always the case. You
Yeah,
do that very easily and it comes very easily to you because you have had years of practice,
yeah,
and the dogs are super stylized, the characters are super stylized because you spent a lot of time drawing from reference.
yes,
So,
yeah.
yeah, can you share a little bit about that, and how you learned to stylize? And yeah, I'd love to hear more about it.
Okay, so obviously we all know what a dog looks like, we know what a cat looks like, but there are certain movements and the way a dog sits, the way a dog lays, the way a cat lays, um, that you have to use a reference from a real animal to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Once you practice drawing that animal in different positions, and you practice and practice and practice, and even now, though I can just draw them, but they're in my style now. If
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to try and change to a different style, I would actually have to go back, get my
Hmm.
reference photos, and start again. I couldn't try a different style from my style now, because I would just be referencing my own style. I don't know if you can
That
understand what I
is
mean.
that is very, very okay. I love that. Wow, I've never thought about it from that perspective. How does that work in your brain, in your hand? How do you go from reference and the real thing to one particular style?
That's very hard to explain.
Mm.
You just keep trying. once you've come away from your references and now you're doing your own little doodles, and you're inventing this little strange dog character, let's say a dog, and then the snout suddenly becomes longer, or the nose becomes bigger, or the eyes become like little dots. I find little dot eyes always give the cutest, these big cartoony eyes. Oh, when I was young, I used to draw proper cartoon eyes with all the little lights shining in them and everything. That's fine. They're not as cute as little dot eyes with this big nose and these silly ears, and you just keep going, and you just keep doing it. Like I say, I've got books full of it. If I passed away and someone came and sorted through my stuff, they think, is this all this girl ever did? Is draw? But you just keep going, and eventually you find something you actually think to yourself, which is unusual for an artist. They never like their own stuff. Oh my God, that's so cute. And then you look at it again. Oh, that's so cute. I must replicate that. And then you just keep replicating it. And every time you do, you change it slightly. But I would say, if you want to come up with your own style, don't look at somebody else's stylized drawings already, because it's so hard to get away from their style. You need to really get your own photos of a real animal, dog, horse, human, whatever, and then you try and do it yourself without looking at anyone else's. Sometimes you think, well, how did they do the hands? So you could look at a couple of different illustrators' hands. More than one, don't just use one. Some people do 3 fingers and a thumb. Some do no fingers. Some do long fingers. And then you just look at all those different things, and then you try and come up with your own. I mean, the thing I can't do, and I haven't practiced enough because I get so annoyed with myself, is bodies. If you look at my work, you'll see I do lots of human heads, loads of them. I love doing them. Bodies, every time I try and add a body, I just ruin it. I just completely ruin it.
It's my practice, yeah.
I'm just going to stick to heads and dogs and cats and horses and rabbits and forget bodies. I'll leave bodies for somebody else.
I find it very fascinating that you said that we should stick to the reference and avoid stylizations while we're figuring it out. I agree. I remember when I was doing this poster for a client, and I was applying my graphic design knowledge and my digital painting knowledge at the time, and I had very limited time to do it. So I looked up the reference photo reference of what I needed. I also looked up a little bit of stylization reference in terms of how I wanted the final look of the piece in terms of colors and the finishing and such, not the characters themselves. And then I completely shut down the reference panel, everything completely off. I did a bunch of thumbnails. I need to mention that was very important. A bunch of thumbnails and positioning and how we're going to do it. And then I completely shut everything off. I was not looking at anything, and I was just thinking about the composition of the poster and the wording of the poster. And I thumbnail it, and then I got the final drawing. And only then I opened the panel just for the color reference, and that's what I did, and it became a really cool stylized piece. I can link to that piece. I did it like 10 years ago or something. I'll link to it at the post associated with this podcast, but I was very happy. I am still happy with it. I see a bunch of things to improve, but I was very happy. It was the first time that I successfully managed to stylize something. So for you, your graphic design helped you with the stylization because you know the rules of graphic design, of composition. If you have a very, the thing you said about pushing the snout, the dots for the eyes, you tested it out, but you had a bit of knowledge prior to it. So it's not inherent to you, but it helped a little bit. So for those of us who are starting from scratch, my thoughts is, if you do a dog and you get like a very big snout and a very tiny tail, then maybe what I think is helpful is play with the shapes, even if it's just, black and white shapes before you do any line drawing or such, just for the composition and the balance of the dog. Let's use a dog as an example, continuing the dog analogy. And if you think it's good, then you haven't completely explored it yet. So keep on pushing and pulling the forms until it gets horrible, and that's how you know you broke it, and then you have to dial back. That's how I learned to do things. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. You should use, if you have no graphic design experience at all, I would say that you put something into shapes, just as you said. So you have a shape for a body, a shape for a snout, a shape for a neck, a shape for an ear, shape for legs, shape for tail, and you look at those separate shapes, and then you put those shapes together until, as you say, you get it to you like it, and then you mess around with it until you, like you say, till you break it, you don't like it anymore, and then you. Sometimes a nice idea is, for anyone who uses digital painting, it's very helpful. Is if you, I don't know, I don't use Procreate, but my daughter uses it. But I use Adobe Illustrator to do all my illustrating. But I like to roughly make something out of shapes, and then I push that into the background. So I change the opacity and lock it in the background of my picture, or you could put it on a different layer if you're using Procreate or whatever. And then you go over it again with your pen. So you're just going over all the lines, and you just keep practicing that until you come up with something that you like. I don't really know anymore how to explain it. It's so hard when you've done something for such a long time. It's like trying to teach somebody to ride a bike. It's like, okay, you do this. I have to go back to such a long time ago, and
and that's why one-on-one and like workshops and such are great, because if you're trying to explain it and you have students in front of you asking you the questions, then everything becomes much easier.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm very much looking forward for our live demo and our workshop, because I think it will be when our audience, when our community starts asking us the questions of how are you doing that and such. I think for me, that's how things start to click. I'm like, oh, right, I'm doing this, but it's not clear for other people because I've been doing this for so long. We call it, I call it the curse of knowledge. It's so obvious to you that you forget it's not obvious to anyone else because you've been so deep in it for so long.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've seen you using dipping pens in ink and watercolor. So what are your favorite art supplies and why?
Okay, at the moment, my favorite is an ink pen. It was actually gifted to me by a really fantastic illustrator, actually. He sent it to me, and you just fill it up with waterproof ink. It's got a lovely, I can't even remember the make of it. And the ink, you can take the inside out and make the ink flow really fast. So if you're using paper that soaks up like watercolor paper, you can just brush on it. It doesn't dry out. I absolutely love it, and because it's waterproof, then after you've inked, you can paint with watercolor paint as well. So you can mix that brush. And I love the strokes that it makes. It's wonderful. And also, I really love my dipping ink pen, the dipping ink nibs. So I've got a pen with different nibs. You just pull them on and out. It's very messy. You end up covered in black ink.
I love it. I love it.
I love black ink. I just love black ink. So I use that on watercolor paper or your etcher sketchbook because they're nice and thick. So you can just hold them up. They stay open and you can hold them. So I usually have a photo that I copy, and I like to do more realistic things to those. I drew some bees. Here's the thing. If I said to you, draw a bee without looking at a bee, you draw a little round circle with some dots, a couple of wings, some little antennas, and a couple of feet.
Yep.
But if you get a picture of a bee from above and look at it, a real bee, it's completely different to whatever is in your brain. So what I did with the dipping ink pen is I got my pad. I sat outside in the summer when it was nice. I had this fantastic picture of a bee, and I just drew loads of these little bees. I think that was in my extra book actually. And then what I do is I scanned it in and I turned them into vectors. There's a graphic designer and me coming out. I scanned them in and turned them into vectors. And then I separated them all and put them in a nice pattern. And then I added colour to them on Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, digitally. I added the colour.
So that's how you do it. Oh,
yes,
now I want to try it.
Yeah. So what I usually do is I do the drawings first, and then I scan them in, and then I vectorize them because I love vectors. Vectors are my favourite. And then I can do anything with the vectors, colour them in, and then I print them out. So this bee thing went from me just sitting in the garden playing with my dipping ink pens, teaching myself how to draw a bee for real, to scanning them in, colouring them in. And I have had so many people buy those prints. You wouldn't believe. I mean, I didn't even do it to make any money. I just did it because it was fun. But I put it up and someone said, "Oh, I love that. Can I buy that?" And there you go.
That's so I had this I love it. I just had this conversation with Brett Bean. We were talking about that. When you do something out of your own heart that you truly love, that's how you connect with other people, because they see how much you love it and they can align themselves with you. You know what I mean? It touches them. There's empathy there. But if you try to do something that everybody else might love, for others, it's not honest. It doesn't connect as well.
No, it's completely different. It's completely different. And you're so relaxed when you're doing something for yourself.
Yeah.
When you have to do something for someone else, you get a little bit uptight. You get a little bit stressed. You know what it's like when you get stressed. You just can't.
It doesn't flow.
Properly. Nothing happens properly. The only time, sometimes I'll have to have a glass of prosecco.
That's a really great art tip. So
and I think, right, I'm going to relax now, and I'll just try and do this. I'm illustrating a book at the moment for somebody, and it's about their little fluffy cat.
Is that a children's book?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I've been putting it off for about a week, and I thought, I've got to do something. I've got to get on with it. Sorry, my dogs are trying to get in on there.
If you're watching just the audio, guys, go to YouTube. The dogs are lovely. You have to see them.
And so I thought, right, I'm going to relax. And I started doing it yesterday morning, and I got the first 7 pages of it done. And I've got so invested in this little kitten. It was their kitten, so it's very personal to draw somebody's kitten. And I got so invested once I'd drawn it. He was so cute. That was it. I could just go then. And the book, the pictures aren't for the author anymore. They're actually for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So it's really a labour of love, actually, at the moment. I'm about to send the first 7 pages off to him this morning to get his feedback, and hopefully you'll like it.
Oh, I'm
I've
so
done a couple
looking
of
forward.
children's books.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about it this morning before I hopped in over Skype to interview. I'm like, I would love to see a children's book illustrated by Lizzie, because the art is just so, you know what I mean? It's just so uncomplicated. It's just so fresh and nice, and it would be so great on a picture book. And now you're actually illustrating one. Please keep me posted on that. I will want that book. And if it's about a cat, then even more so. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Before I go on to the last topic, I just want to share this little story with you. You just reminded me of that, talking about reference and how important it is. When I started university, I went to study graphic design, as I mentioned, and we had an art subject there. In the very first class, I remember so clearly, our professor asked us to do a drawing, no reference, just from our brains, and it had to have, please tell me you agree with me, okay, it had to have a naked woman, a frame, 4 or 5 chairs, a tree, a table, a headless chicken, and 3 pigs in a train. And I did that. And the whole point was like, then everybody was going to look at their own drawings and see how weird the pigs and, you know, the tree were, because we didn't have any reference. And it was just to put in our brains, like, you need reference. But, you know, I remember I was doing that. I was super happy doing it. I'm like, how the hell do I do a train? Oh my goodness, I cannot do a train without reference. And I was doing the best I could. And probably my drawing was very creepy, because the teacher looked at me and said, you need a shrink. And it was it was first day of university, first year, and that's how all my colleagues met me, kind of. It was really fun. But please tell me, who on their right minds would do something normal out of that subject?
No, nobody would.
A painted woman. It was not a naked woman. It was a painted woman.
Oh,
like,
wow.
A painted, like, I just drew a naked woman with a bunch of paint on her skin. But anyway, apparently it was creepy enough that I needed a shrink. But I'm special. I'm not crazy. I'm special. I'm limited edition. But please tell me it's a weird combination of subject matter.
That is a very weird combination of subjects, but I think it's a fantastic thing to do on the first day, because that really teaches you the difference between what is real and what is in your head, because you have to have references. I mean, most famous illustrators, what's his name, Drew Struzan, the American illustrator that does all the posters for Blade Runner and Star Wars. He actually uses pictures of himself as a reference.
Yeah.
So if someone's jumping or doing anything, even he uses references. You know, everyone uses references. I mean, one of the a really good learning example is one of my teachers. We had to draw a landscape. He had a picture. Now this was with a reference. He had a picture of a beach and a lighthouse and something that you think, oh, I can just draw that. I don't even need to look at the picture. I can just draw it. Because in your head, you know what a beach and a lighthouse and rocks look like. So you draw it. And then he turned it upside down and he said, now draw it again, but copy it from the reference. So you draw it upside down. Now, when you're looking at a picture of a beach and a lighthouse and everything upside down, your brain doesn't compute it properly. So you have to draw what you're seeing on the reference. And then when you turn your picture upside down and you compare the two pictures, the one that you drew upside down actually looks much more like the reference photo than the one that you drew up the right way, because it's changed the whole way your brain is thinking. It's very hard to tell your brain, no, okay, I'll draw a face. There's eyes and nose and mouth, ears.
And that is good. That means you're healthy, by the way, because it's just our brains are great at simplifying everything, so we are not overloaded with unnecessary information. We do not need to know how a bee is from every angle to move on with our normal lives. And that's why our brains simplify everything, and this is why we need the reference so we can actually do it. But if you spend a full day, you know, years and years with horses every day and you're drawing them all the time, you come to a point that you know a horse from every single angle and you do not need reference, because your brain realizing like, okay, we need to know how this works. I'll memorize it for you. The minute you stop drawing for more than a month, I'm going to totally forget about the details, but for now, we'll keep it. Okay, one last topic before we wrap up. What do you think was the hardest thing for you to overcome when you're doing art?
I think the hardest thing to overcome is realizing that you can't do everything. I think the hardest thing to overcome is looking at other people's art and thinking, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. There's no point. Put your paints away. You're never going to be able to do anything as good as that. Comparing yourself to other people, you have to realize that your art is completely different. There's so many different art styles in the world that you can't do every one. When you go to art school, you know that you try everything at art school, and then they decide, you decide actually which one you want to follow. I mean, I do love painting. I like painting in oils. I like watercolors. I absolutely love watercolors. Now, some people hate them because they feel like they haven't got enough control, and they get so angry at themselves because they can't use watercolors. I mean, and some people are really good at doing line drawings. Like, I love line drawings. I love pencil, and I love ink, and I love just line drawings. And sometimes you try and paint things and you completely ruin it. And the hardest thing for me to overcome is actually saying to myself, right, you're good at this and you're not really that good at this. So you stick to this route, you go down that route. You can keep coming back and trying if you want, as long as you know that you mustn't get crazy or mad at yourself because you can't do it. You just keep trying. And I think that's the thing. Yeah.
And that's Lizzie for you. If you'd like to learn how to simplify your drawing so you can draw your pets, please come and learn from her on November 17th, 9 a.m. LA time. Lizzie and I will host a free live demo. You can find the link for that and everything else mentioned in this episode at etchrlab.com/Lizzie. That's etchrlab.com/LIZZIE. Like the podcast? Help us support the show by subscribing and giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts at etchrlab.com/go/Apple. See you in the next episode, and until then, let's make more art.